Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Bird and Goal podcast. Bird and Goal from the week four. I am Jackie, and I am joined here by my lovely co-host.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Let's talk some Cardinal football.
Yep, let's get on into it. We're almost a week removed from that Thursday night game, primetime game
Mhm.
against Seattle. Final score 23-20. Unfortunately, yet again, we did not come away with the dub this week. And you were actually in attendance, so go ahead and give me your perspective from being at the game.
Yeah, it was a typical Cardinal Seahawk primetime game on Thursday night. I feel like every single year we played this game, and unfortunately, it's an entertaining game, and we keep getting put on this Thursday night football game. I'd really like to play someone else on prime time that's not the Seahawks, but they always travel good on when they come down here to Phoenix, and um, unfortunately, you just came up short again, and it hurts with two back-to-back division losses here in 4 days, and we got to regroup.
Yeah, it was another frustrating fashion of we could have won the game. And there are just a couple of blunders that happen along the way offensively. Again, it's just another one of those, your defense can only hold for so long. Um, I feel not totally terrible, but just, you know, probably Kyler Murray's worst game of the season thus far. Two turnovers, which you can kind of blame Marv, especially the second one. You could definitely blame Marv. You got to haul that in. You can't be juggling that ball. Your QB could like actually delivered it in a very tight window there, so you have to come up with that catch. The first interception, clear miscommunication. Kurt Warner had a very interesting take on that because if you watch it, it's like okay, Marv stopped running his route, and then Kyler threw it. But Kurt Warner had a very interesting take on that. He said it's got to be tricky when you're playing with a mobile quarterback, whether he starts to scramble and you don't know whether to break your route and or just continue going with what you're doing. So that was an interesting take on it. So I think it's kind of 50-50 blame there. Um, but it was a tale. You had put it cutely in the Discord. It was a tale of two Marvs. So
Yeah.
first half, Marvin Harrison, complete letdown, and then the second half, kind of putting it together in game. Had that very nice touchdown catch. And so when we finally saw something of Marv that we haven't seen thus far in his career, and that's him actually high pointing the ball. Beautiful throw. So what? So how do you feel about that connection there with him and Kyler?
Yeah, no, I mean it's still very evident and obvious that they're not on the same page yet. I don't know when they're gonna get on the same page, but you still see the miscommunication, and really kind of with like most of the wide receivers. I know we saw it with Michael Wilson last week, last week where he cut the route short and Kyler went deep, and it's a lot of these option routes that these wide receivers have, and they're just kind of not making the same reads or that Kyler is, and it's a little frustrating. But yeah, you often see quarterbacks when you're watching the NFL, and you when they scramble, you start seeing the hand gestures and all that to have these wide receivers kind of run free, 8 seconds into the play. But you don't often kind of know what you're doing, like Kurt said. You're just kind of running around with your like a chicken with their heads cut off until maybe Kyler gets you the ball. Uh, I do think that the passing game looked pretty good after Marv woke up. I thought the interception was like peak like frustration that the Cardinal fan base has had with Marvin Harrison Jr. And then for him to turn around and like to be able to high point the ball and finally and come down with a touchdown, I think that was huge for Marv's mental to kind of get him back on the right path instead of like further doom spiraling into, oh, am I even good enough to play in the NFL type stuff like that.
Yeah, you and I had talked about it yesterday. Um, you know, Stuff like that when it happens. you don't really see it get fixed in game. And I said that, I feel like Kyler has more confidence than Marv has in himself. And we also had mentioned too, like Kyler and Marv are so alike to a fault, where they're not very vocal guys. They're, two soft spoken guys. So they're not going to get on each other or call each other out in any sort of way. And then they both have a sense of like, if things are not going right, they tend to shut down mentally. And it's like, you got all the talent in the world, the raw athleticism, but like, if something's not right, between the ears, it's a big disconnect. So it was kind of nice to see them kind of work through that in game rather than like, coming out this week and then fixing everything. But it's funny that, everything me and you talked about last week, kind of like we called it, like it kind of happened like in this game where I said like, you got to give Marv a layup. So he did had that, nice little bubble screen to start the game to remember what a football feels like. And then I said, I kind of miss some of the concepts of the Cliff Kingsbury era Kyler, where, he takes it upon himself to try to make something happen. And I feel like you really saw that in those last two drives to tie up the game there. And like the up tempo of the offense, that I feel like that's something that we needed to implement. And then I said, I felt for Michael Wilson, you could feel his frustration, and he wants to make a play. He had a couple nice plays, um, especially that fourth down conversion that should have not been a catch at all. That was like pure luck. But it's like, like you got to give him, like, of course, give Barb chances because he's your supposed to be your wide receiver one, but wide receiver two behind Trey McBride. But you got to give Barb those chances, but you also have to utilize your other weapons, especially now that we're our running back room is beat up. So it was nice to see him get some touches. And then yeah, this is the most times attempts that Kyler has thrown this year is 41 attempts.
Yeah,
Um,
no, just looking over like the box score and like seeing how many targets the wide receivers had, like I don't know if we're gonna have much like complaints of like ball distribution. Like Trey McBride had 11, Marvin Harrison Jr. had 10. Like that's what we expect. That's 1A and 1B as far as our passing or our receiving options go. But like Michael Wilson had 6 targets, Greg Dortch had 5 targets. Like that's that's what that's what the offense is. And like there is no wide receiver two. That is, you have two number ones. You hope to be number ones, right? You have Trey McBride, who is a top 3 tight end in the NFL, and you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who maybe this is like the jumping off point, and like yeah, I think that's perfect. It's not they don't have 8s, and the other wide receivers have 2 targets. We're starting to see a little more uptick in usage, and maybe that was because James Conner was out, and well, also the success that they had on the up tempo offense when they were able to move the ball down the field there late in the game. So maybe we see that at the start of the game next week against Tennessee, especially at home, to kind of get the offense settled in, especially with the question marks in the backfield now that we have with the injuries in the running back room.
yeah, real quick, I just want to say hello to some folks here. We have our boy David. Uh, when are we going to trade for Alvin Kamara? I would love to have Alvin Kamara, but someone did bring up the good point that he's got a pretty hefty contract, so I don't know if you want to take that on. Um, Jace says, Redbird reboot into Bird and Gold. Let's go. Yes, our little transition. So we've got everybody's got a loaded Wednesday night as far as podcasts go. Papa Joe says, "What's up, everybody?" Silver Wolf says, "Let's go." Classy Nasty, thank you for being here as well. Lorenzo at first was hoping to trade for a running back. Right now, we just need to fix our O play calls. And we'll get a little more into that. I do want to touch on a few more things with the Seattle game. Hello, Nick L. Um, we need more up tempo offense, which I completely agree. I had said that last week that if you go up tempo, the defense can't give you any crazy looks, so they're not going to really throw something at you that you can't handle.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right.
and then Silver Wolf says there's no wide receiver to preach. Yeah, and that's our offense. Such as me and you have talked about it, that Everybody would have liked for us to draft someone or trade for someone, but this it's just not what we're doing in this system. If you did go out and get a number two, who knows how many targets they're seeing a game if wide receiver 1A or 1B is seeing 6 targets a game.
Right.
But he did bring up a good Nick Ellis as a wide receiver. Need I can't talk. We need a wide receiver with speed. I would like to see a speedy guy in here just to kind of mix it up, but I don't know if necessarily that's something that we're going to address right away. I was thinking about that too. I think I mentioned it last week. You kind of miss the Rondell Moore role, especially when plays are breaking down. That's kind of how like he made a name for himself in the Cliff Kingsbury offense was like plays breaking down. Rondell Moore's out there somewhere open, and it's like I kind of wish that our wide receivers would do that more. I don't know if anybody knows this, but on if you watch the games on Amazon Prime, they have an alternate cast. It's the Next Gen Stat broadcast, and if you click on that, your perspective is like kind of like you're playing Madden, like you're behind the quarterback, and you can see who's open downfield. And there was a couple of particular plays where Tyler's scrambling around trying to find someone open downfield, and everyone's just kind of standing there. And I feel like with the mobile quarterback that can extend plays, and he likes to throw on the run too. You got to try to get open, and you see him too. He's directing traffic. He's trying to move people around. So it's like you got to have that savvy to just quarterbacks running around, and your whoever's covering you drops in coverage. You got to move over a little bit. Put the hand up, make yourself available.
What else do you have for me touch on?
Sorry, I'm just going off on tangents now. But I feel like this was it as frustrating it was, especially like the way we lost to with that muffed kick, not hitting the landing zone. There are some moral victories to kind of hang your hat on. With obviously the big story is the Kyler Marv connection, finding that late in the game, and then just like being in a prime time game like that where you have more eyes on you than you normally would. I feel like that's put a lot of pressure on Gannon to finally say, okay, we need to make a change. Here in this offense, this is not how playoff team offenses look. So I think that's another positive is like he's finally feeling the pressure of something's got to change, and I think that's like the definition of insanity is like keeping like doing something the same and expecting different results.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you can't go out and throw out the whole playbook in week 3 and week 4 and try to revamp everything. Like you're going to add in new wrinkles. You may lean heavily on the up tempo or the 4 minute offense more. Um, but yeah, with James Conner going down and now Trey Benson with the injury that's going to put him in for 4 to 6 weeks, I think was what they said. You definitely need to find an alternate way to win games now. The offensive line has struggled. It's struggled all year, and you're to the point now where we're like Cam Ward said, we're a quarter of the way through the season. So like you need to change something now because you can't just be like, yeah, well, James Conner's out and he was our bruiser running back that we could pound it up the middle with. It's like, okay, well, we still like what Trey Benson can do. Maybe we can still pound it up the middle and run the ball. It's like, well, now you've got to change everything because Michael Carter's not that guy. Him and Amari are not the running back duo that James Conner and Trey Benson are. So now the ball is in Drew Pensing's court to adapt on the fly and change the offensive scheme a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean we'll get this out of the way, and I'm sure as everybody knows, Trey Benson is on the IR. He is expected to return, but will definitely miss 4 games. Um, you're playing Tennessee, not a very good team, so I
No.
don't feel like they felt the need to make a trade tomorrow. So Nick L says should Bam Knight should get some carries on Sunday. We shall see. They elevated Michael Carter, so all the Michael Carter believers, you know, you'll have something to look forward to this Sunday. But do you think we're going to trade? Do you think we should make a trade for a running back?
No, I don't think they will. Unfortunately, if this happened later in the season, who was when you remember when Max Williams got hurt and then the Cardinals went out like the next day and they traded for Zach Ertz and everyone lost their mind. It was like at that point we were much closer. We were further along in the season, so it kind of made sense to be like, hey, go all in right now and go get a move. I don't think right now with them being 2-2, while still in the hunt and like for sure, in contention for staying in the wild card race. I don't think they'll do anything now. Um, Granted, if we don't see anything, or maybe there's a little bit of a delay in Trey Benson ramping back up after his surgery and his recovery, maybe then they'll go get a guy just because you don't know what the injury is going to be like. And maybe he does play a little hesitant or a little different with thinking about the injury in the back of his head and he's not the same guy. Maybe then you see them make a move closer to the deadline. But at this time, I don't. I mean, as much fun as it would be to like wake up to a notification that we traded for Alvin Kamara or you traded for Brees Hall. Like that's not going to happen. As much fun as it would be, I'll have to stick to Madden on that one. But I just think they're going to wrinkle in something new and maybe rely heavily more on Kyler's legs. Maybe we finally get a little dual action on what made Kyler so special this coming week against Tennessee. Also, a really good time to maybe change up something or try something new in your offensive play calling because the Titans are the Titans, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not going to be something that's going to happen this week because you should absolutely go out and beat the Titans. Whether you're running out Bam Knight, Amari DiMercado, Michael Carter, like that trio, however you want to run it, should beat the Titans.
Yeah.
Of course, Kyler's legs. But I just have a feeling that, and I even felt this way when Connor got hurt. It's like you finish out the season, not make any trade. You don't add somebody new in the room, and you're looking at Monty, and maybe you miss the playoffs or get waxed first round, and it's like did you do enough to help us out with the run game? So who knows? I do kind of want to circle back something real quick. Lorenzo had made me think about this, in regards to how JG defending Drew's play calling. And me and you talked about this last night. It's like if we were going to lose the game, I would have liked to see them at least try to go for two at the end. And it's pretty to not get it versus lose it on a muff kick and defense can't stop the Seattle at the 40. Um,
Right.
but that's kind of telling as a head coach that you don't trust your offense to try to go for two. And it's like you need to tell me that you don't feel confident that that guy's got any play in his bag to try to get a 2 point conversion.
Yeah. I mean, maybe devil's advocate. I know the old saying is, you play for the tie on the road and the win at home, but so early in the season, you've not had success running the ball up the middle. Your interior offensive line outside of Yelda Froholt is not playing good. Hopefully we see a move there. I hope Will Hernandez is ready to go here sooner rather than later. But if not, maybe you go something quick to the outside or like a screen, and like we know how susceptible those passes are to being batted down, especially with how quick defenders are now to get off the edge. Like I don't know what's like a go-to play that the Cardinals would even have. Like maybe a jump ball to Marv, but like until the touchdown, we've not seen Marv be that guy to go up and be aggressive in the air to come down with the ball. So like I don't even know, what was it, a couple years ago when they came back against Vegas and they converted like 4 2-point conversion plays like that whole year, and it was that same little like quick wide receiver drag across the field across the motion, and it was like it worked every time. Like I don't know if they have that play or that's something that they feel comfortable with, but yeah, the landing zone debacle kind of sucked, gave them the short field, but that's what they're trying to do now, and you saw it in the primetime games the rest of the week that landing that ball high up in the landing zone forces these returners now to have to bring the ball up, and you're starting on like in the teens, you're starting on the 16, 17, 18 yard line as opposed to the 25. Now what you do run the risk of is less than 3 feet and they get to start on the 40 instead of the 18.
Yeah, Nick Elsa shovel pass like Connor got in week one. I said the exact same thing. I'm like you you couldn't have at least thrown out the shovel pass again. So that that's my last like complaint about like the offensive coordinator and head coach kind of thing is I wish JG was a little more aggressive. Like you're playing a divisional opponent. Maybe go for the win there.
Mhm.
Um, but we've got some news outside of the Trey Benson uh, to the IR. Not necessarily news, but just the window to return open for Bilal Nichols.
Yes, yeah, we
Um,
are now past week 4, so every player that was on the pup or put on the pup can now be activated. So that's exciting. I'm sure another shot in the arm for this defensive front isn't going to be frowned upon. I think they'll be excited to hopefully get Balil here. It is just the window, so now it's 21 days before they have to activate him, or he goes on IR for the rest of the season. So hopefully that means he is coming sooner rather than later. We did get no update on Walter Nolan or BJ Olajari. I don't know where he is. Just no news is now scary news because we've not heard a peep about BJ now, and he tore his ACL last August, so now we're coming up on what 14, 13 months since he tore his ACL. Like we are now on like the far end of the recovery, the return table timetable for the injury. So I don't know. Luckily, Baron Browning has been a blessing. Hopefully, Walter and Balil Nichols come back here soon, so that front gets a little more help. And I would like to see what is going on with BJ Olajari.
did we talk about it last week where I was like, I don't think he is actually a real person.
He's
I had to Google what he looked like.
our AI pass rusher. Like he's out there.
By the way, people, I still do. If anybody has known about or listened to the Redbird Red Zone, I still do that too. That's going to be on Thursdays at our other YouTube channel. But I think it was on that show. I was like, I had to Google what he looked like because I'm like, I am not confident that I can pick him out of like a police lineup. So yeah, like no news out of him. But hopefully we can get Balil Nichols back. That would help us out a lot, especially old man Calais. As good as he's been, it's you can tell it's hard for him to close out games like he has.
Yeah, a couple more bodies will definitely help Calais out. As productive and efficient he's been in his snaps so far this season, give old man a little longer breather.
Definitely. So hopefully we get some guys back soon. But it just sucks that I feel like every week it's somebody new, and it's like we can't afford to be losing any more people, especially on the offense side of the ball, because we're already very anemic, in our play calling. And we going into the season we were a run first team, and now that we can't run the ball, we can't also throw the ball because we have no run game, or we have no passing game. And then we talked about it too, where it's like as much as we are all pretty much out on Drew Petzing, I don't think firing him in season is going to do us much good, because then I would think that the next man up to call the plays would be Spencer Whipple.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like this week against Tennessee, it's going to be a get right game. But it also does like worry me in the back of my mind, because, Cam Ward went on a presser, and I quote, he said, this team's ass. And we're not all playing together. It's inconsistent. And I feel like that's one of those like press conferences that happens, and then the team goes on to like turn it around and go on like a win streak. So
Yeah.
yeah, like one of two things could happen. It could either be that, or they continue to suck the rest of the season. Um, but if you get a win here, if you're the Cardinals, you get a win here, and it's a close one. You're not restoring any faith in the fans, in your team. Or if you whoop up on them like you should, no one's still going to take it serious because, like, well, duh, you should whoop up on the Titans because they are the worst team in the league.
Yeah, yeah. There is no like you're not going to make up a bunch of ground. You're not going to after this week if the Cardinals win, you're not going to see them fly up the power polls. And when the rankings all come out Tuesday, you're not going to see them +8. They're not magically going to jump into the top 10 by beating the Titans. Um, that also being said, no one's really going to pay attention to this game nationally.
No.
Not at all. Like no one on ESPN, no one on NFL Network is like really excited to show you the highlights of the Titans Cardinals game this coming Sunday. Like so, you might have nationally a little bit under the radar, so like you can maybe allow or not for us because we don't want to see them look pedestrian against the Titans, but you could probably skate by like if they win, you know, 13-3, no one's going to be like, wow, what a gauntlet that what a battle that had to be. Everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's kind of how that game should have gone. Looking at those two teams. So I don't think they're going to come out and score 40 points on the Titans, but it would be nice that they look coherent. And maybe it's kind of like the Panther game before you let them back in the door. Maybe you're up 24-3 or something, and while could be questions coming out of the game, at least you took care of business and you buried a less talented team than you.
Yeah, Silver Wolf says if we lose, everyone should be fired. And it's like, yeah, I think if we lose, then yeah, a crash out amongst all fans is very valid because I have not paid attention to much Titans games this year. Unfortunately, Cam Ward has probably been the most underwhelming, underhyped, number one overall pick to come out, and who knows when.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but right before we went live, I was watching some of the highlights from last week. They got blown out by the Texans, who the Texans have not looked very good this year at all.
No, that was their first one of the year.
Yeah, so that was of course it's their first win of the year. CJ Stroud, was kind of looking reminiscent of rookie CJ Stroud because that's how bad the Titans are. But also like the Texans offensive line is terrible and our offensive line is terrible. So they can still get after it. They can still get after Kyler. I know Stroud was in the dirt a couple times. But yeah, I think this will be a get right game. And we'll just have to go out, hopefully win convincingly, and we'll go from there. And then, who knows? We'll start stacking up these wins, get healthy at the right time, and I'm not gonna throw the towel. I'm not gonna throw in the towel yet on this team. We're still a quarter into the season.
Yeah, and I know there was some doom and gloom on the timeline on the feed this past week after the games, but you look when the schedule comes out, you look at these first four games, and you say, okay, the Panthers and the Saints aren't good teams, and then you have two division games. Like, I think everyone was probably in the head, like prediction wise, like, yeah, they should go 2-2, and I think how close they played these games is kind of the bad taste in your mouth. But I think a lot of people are taking it the wrong way, like, oh, same old Cardinals, they can't win division games, they can't beat good teams. This team's not going to go anywhere. But they didn't get blown out. I would have that same kind of thought if if they lost these two games like 30-10 and 6-34 or something like that, where like you got outclassed type of losses in the division. They weren't. They were two time expiring field goals, and you were in the game. So like we're 4 points from being 4-0, and a lot of fans are like, yeah, you're also very close to being 0-4. Like sure you are, but you're 2-2 through 4 games, and I think a lot of Cardinal fans, if not a good majority of them, said that through 4 games, back in April when the schedule came out, if I said, hey, Cardinals are going to go 2-2 through their first four, you're probably like, yeah, they should go 2-2. So I don't get the panic yet. And I was on Twitter this week talking about I'll crash out when they lose to the Colts and they lose to the Bengals and they lose to the Falcons, and then they don't make the playoffs. Like that's when I'll start. The sky is falling. But two close division losses, I'm not going to be like, that's it. Who are we taking? Get to Tankathon. Let's start running the draft simulator and see who the Cardinals are taking with their first round pick. I'm not doing that yet.
No, just real quick, I want to say hello to Dana. Yeah, I was watching some of their show too, so I get it. But thank you for tuning in and being here. Yeah, like what we were just at dinner. Then I said I'm still going to remain positive and optimistic about this team until we are completely out of the wild card, and then I will positively and optimistically, you know, go over who I want to take with our draft pick come April. But yeah, like if you want doom and gloom, there's a lot of it on the Twitter timeline. Um, but I still am going to go into every week thinking that we are going to come away with a win. Um, with that being said, I really don't have a lot left. It's been almost over a week since we last played, so and then I just don't have a lot of notes on this game.
Yeah,
Do you?
no, the mini buy, yeah. The mini buy is good for this team. Those are two tough opponents, and their Cardinals are a little beat up. So I'm sure the guys are making good use of the training room and the heat and the ice and making sure their bodies are right.
Oh yeah, speaking of training facility, they're getting a new one, 2028.
There you go. Did you like that? Did you like that lead? Look at that. Yeah, that looked cool. Unfortunately, it's that land that the Coyotes were trying to get for their new hockey arena. So we had to sacrifice the Coyotes, but it looks like Michael Bidwell's shelling out some money, and I'm excited to see what this new training facility and football operations building is going to look like once it's been, shovel in the ground and all complete.
Hey, I'll let you read this one.
Oh, let me say, it's going to take 10 years in order for the Cowboys. Does Kyler have that in his DNA? Which can never face of the franchise today. Love me some Klopp. Yeah, Kyler is the face of the franchise. I unfortunately don't think he has been in an offense that is suited for him long enough. Whereas, like, Dak comes out and slings the ball. So I know a lot of people talk about the run game coordinator that moved to Dallas, and like that's the be all end all, and that's why the Cowboys are so good. But also,
Dak's playing good football.
Dak is QB1 right now, and so far this season. So like, yeah, they're successful running the ball, but they're also very successful throwing the ball. So you have this balanced offense that the Cardinals do not have. So you can't be like, oh well, look, they can run the ball so well. It's like, yeah, because if they don't worry about Dak, they're going to get beat on the back end. And right now, the Cardinals aren't beating anybody on the back end, and they can't run the ball, so you're just spinning in the mud.
Yeah, yeah. With what is it? Kyler's like the second leading rusher on the team right now. Probably going to be first after next week.
Probably.
Yeah. So, and we talked a little bit about Kyler. Kind of his future of the with the team, and that as I'm a fan still, but I'm also a realist that if things don't work out after this season or next season, you got to move off of it at some point. But that's not to say that he can't go on to be successful elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think a team will, absolutely pick him up and try to tailor an offense to his skill set. Because he's on he's gone from like two opposite ends of the spectrum. The Cliff Kingsbury like college offense air raid type to now trying to be in like a box and be like a true pocket, in the pocket quarterback, which is not particularly his skill set. So it would be interesting to see what a new system could do for him. You can only keep changing offensive coordinators within a team so many times before you decide just to go in a completely different direction.
Right. Yeah,
So
we talked about it too. If the Cardinals do move on from Kyler, he will absolutely be playing NFL football the next season.
mhm.
There is no like, well, maybe he goes back and gets his degree or goes and saves the ocean.
Plays baseball.
Yeah, he goes and saves the oceans like Josh Rosen wanted to do and clean up the beaches. Like when when or if or when the Cardinals move on from Kyler Murray, he will be playing in the NFL still. He's not going to disappear and ride off into the sunset or a cabin in the woods like Jake Plummer. Like he'll still be an NFL quarterback. Hopefully there's no sort of like Baker resurgence, because then everyone will be crowing about, oh, see, you should have just, gave him what he needed to be successful here. So,
Yeah, and then like I said about Baker too, it's like, once you're written off and you're no longer have that pressure to be like the savior of a franchise and you're written off and like you kind of play like you have nothing left to lose.
yeah. Yeah, and we talked about it too that like, these guys are 22 years old. They come out of college, they're the first pick or a high pick in the NFL draft, and they're handed the keys to the franchise, and they say, "There you go, lead the team." And these 22-year-old guys have all this pressure to just learn the game first and be successful. Well, now also, you have to lead the charge. You got to be the guy ahead of the other 52. These top quarterbacks in the league, we talked about it last night while we were at dinner. Like of these teams that are Super Bowl favorites or they have these top quarterbacks, like they're all the guy on their team. There is no team that is top in the NFL that you're just like, yeah, well, their safety is really good. Like, oh, Kyle Hamilton is really the face of the Ravens. Like, no, the quarterback gets paid all this money to also be the leader of the team too. So like when you don't have that vocal leader or the success, these young kids get crushed. And then, like you said, when they get this chance, like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, who get a second chance, Daniel Jones, look what he's doing with Indy. He was trash in New York, and now they get the pressure off their shoulders. Justin Field to an extent, whereas he's not been as successful. I'm sure he's glad he's not in Chicago because you just have all these, the pressure and the the everyday struggle just to like pull this bad franchise out of the mud and do it all by yourself because these teams that pick at the top of the draft, they're not good football teams. Like they're not loaded with talent. So you get these guys here and you're like, okay, here's an empty pantry. Go make me a 3-star Michelin meal. It's like, sorry, dude, you get a can of SpaghettiOs. And like if you're gonna tell me that this meal sucks, like you gotta give me some time. Let me go to the grocery store.
Yep, you just got to give it time, and if when the time comes that we do move off, um, unless we've traded for a pretty kind of well established quarterback, you're not going to get instant success with a rookie, especially just kind of the way like rookies have been coming out of college lately. There's just a big talent disparity there. Silver Wolf says per Tankathon, we are currently picking at 17. So we're taking our offense lineman.
It should be, right?
Yeah, yeah, that would be my way too early draft analysis is that we got to take an offensive lineman. Um, ours is looking terribly rough. And then Classy Nasty says this Titans game is basically a scrimmage game, which I do agree. Gardecki. Yes, I agree that, we still have to definitely play like we're not playing down to our opponent like we have been in the past, but it's like you should definitely win this game.
Yeah, I mean, like
In what fashion we do is we'll see, but this is a definitely like it's the Titans.
yeah, no, and like you look at their stats so far for the Titans this season, and looking at my numbers here, they're 31st in total offense. They're last in the league in passing. They're 29th in rushing. They're last in the league on third down. Like this is like this defense, what the Cardinals have, which is still sixth in the league in points given up. They should be able to take care of the Titan offense pretty easily, which is going to be 3-and-outs, some turnovers. The offense is gonna get plenty of chances Sunday to get right because of this defense, and they're gonna be like you don't even have to go and score. It's not gonna be like, hey, we need you to go get 30 points against the Titans Sunday, or else we're gonna lose to the worst team in the league. Like this defense is playing at a fantastic, almost an elite level right now, and they're banged up. So like, go take care of the Titans. Um, give your offense as many opportunities to get right and come out of there with a win and be healthy.
And I wish I would have wrote this stat down because I was watching a YouTube video, like like an official NFL account like preview of this game, and I want to say the Titans are like 2 for 11 in third down conversions.
Yeah, last week they were 2 for 11 against the Texans.
Yes, that's what it was. So yeah, obviously we're not worried about the defense in any capacity against this game. It's just going to be interesting to see what our offense is going to do now that we are down running back 1 and 2. But no, to this comment here, we are not hitting the panic button with the Cardinals. I'm still very optimistic because we do have a pretty little easy stretch of games coming up here. Just hopefully we get Will Johnson back, and some guys are a little banged up, so we'll see. We'll get the official injury report tomorrow. Um, and then Lorenzo says, I'm hitting who to blame this game button, play calling or players." Um, there's
Both.
no excuses, so we'll see.
There's no wrong answer to that game. Yeah, you can make an argument for both. I would say.
Yeah, you can go see all of the above with this one. But that's all I have. Do you have anything else before we wrap up here?
No, no. Really, just like really hope the offense gets right. And maybe the run game surprises us and they look a little competent.
Definitely. And hopefully we have a little more to talk about next week. I know this was kind of a little bit of a shorter episode, given that it's almost been a week. I kind of had to like speed run some highlights of last week. Obviously, like the Kyler to Marv touchdown, that was the big high point of the game, and the rest was just kind of a blur.
Yeah.
But hopefully next week we can be talking about a W, or we can all be in the comments crashing out. But this has been another wonderful episode of the Bird and Goal podcast.
We're not going to do a score prediction?
Oh, my bad. Okay, what's your prediction?
I know you're getting taken to the woodshed by your daughter on your pick'ems this season.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, I do pick'ems with my 3-year-old every week. The previous week she was 9 for 7. I was like 6 and 10. I don't have my notebook with me. I left it at work, but she was like 8 for 8. What? 8 was it? 8 for 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 for 8, and then I was like 4 of.
Yeah, she's up huge on you on the season right now. So I understand if you just want to get past the predictions. Your predictions haven't been, your win losses haven't been the most on par so far for the season. But if we got time, we could do a little score prediction.
Yes, we can do. Before I say the score prediction, I do want to make it known too. She said she did pick Seattle to win.
She don't miss.
She does not miss. But no, I'm gonna say we're gonna win 31-10.
That's right where I was going. So for the sake of variety, I'll say they go 30-6. Cardinals win.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. This has been another fun episode of the Bird and Gold podcast. My name is Jackie. You can find me on Twitter at jsandiego. That is with 2 O's.
And you can find me on Twitter at BrownC74.
And the podcast account. What's the podcast account?
The podcast account is Bird and Goal, at Bird and Goal.
There you have it, folks. We'll see you back here next week. Good night, everybody.